The stagecoach door slammed open into the cold, and Zeke Harper stepped forward, then stopped when the driver shook his head and said her name wasn't on the list. The wind cut across the station, carrying low voices behind him, men already deciding she'd never come, or worse, had chosen not to. Zeke didn't answer. He just reached into his coat, felt the folded letter still there, and looked south where the storm had swallowed the road. Inside that letter was a promise neither of them had spoken out loud, and now the town was watching to see if he'd let it die. If you were standing there, would you wait? Or ride into that storm? Stay with me. The wind came down off the ridge like it had something to prove. It pushed through Broken Ridge in long, steady gusts, rattling the loose boards on Silas Crow's station and sending dry snow skimming across the hard ground. Ezekiel Harper stood just beyond the hitching post, shoulders squared into it, one gloved hand wrapped tight around the other. He didn't pace, didn't fidget. He just watched the road. The stage came in late, wheels grinding slow through packed ice, horses breathing heavy clouds into the cold air. Zeke didn't move when it stopped. He waited where he was, eyes fixed on the door. One man stepped down, then another. A woman in a gray shawl, older, careful with her footing. Zeke counted without meaning to. 3. 4. That was it. No one else came out. Silas Crow climbed down from the side, boots hitting the frozen dirt with a dull thud. He glanced at Zeke, then reached for the folded manifest tucked into his coat. "You expecting someone?" Silas asked, though his tone said he already knew the answer. Zeke didn't look at him. "Name's Lottie Brooks." Silas ran a finger down the page. Slow. Once. Then again. The wind pressed harder against the building. Silas shook his head. "No Brooks on this run." Zeke's jaw shifted, just a fraction. He stepped closer, took the paper without asking, eyes moving over the names. He didn't rush it. He read every line, then handed it back. "She was supposed to be on this one," he said. Silas tucked the paper away. "Could have missed a connection. Weather's been cutting schedules apart all week." Zeke nodded once. Not agreement, just acknowledgement. The driver, a narrow man with a frost-stiff beard, was loosening the harness. He glanced over, voice low. "There was a storm south of here," he said. "Bad one." Zeke turned his head slightly. "How bad?" The man shrugged, but it wasn't careless. "Bad enough." That was all he said. Zeke didn't press him. He stood a moment longer, watching the empty doorway of the stage as if something might still step through it. Then he turned, slow and deliberate, and walked back toward his horse. The leather creaked when he swung into the saddle. He didn't look back. The ride to his ranch took just over an hour in clear weather. That night, with the wind pushing sideways, it felt longer. The gate creaked open the same way it always did. The porch boards gave under his boots in the same places. Nothing had changed. That was the problem. Inside, the house held the day's cold. Zeke set his hat down on the peg by the door, shrugged out of his coat, and crossed the room without lighting the lamp. He didn't go to the table first. He went to the chair across from it. He stood there a second, then reached down and brushed his palm across the seat. A thin layer of dust came away on his glove. He wiped it off with the side of his thumb. Slow, careful. Until the wood showed clean. Then he pulled the chair out, left it there. The lamp came to life with a soft hiss. Warm light spread across the room, catching on the edge of the table where a folded letter sat waiting. He picked it up like he'd done it 100 times. The paper had worn soft along the folds. The ink hadn't faded. "Dear Mr. Harper." He read it through again. Every line. The steady way she wrote. No wasted words. No apology for asking for something better than what she had. "I am not looking to be taken in," she had written. "I am looking to stand beside someone." Zeke leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. The fire in the hearth had burned low. He added a split log without looking, the flame catching slow. He didn't reach for food, didn't pour coffee. He just sat there, the letter open in his hands, the other chair across from him empty. After a while, he stood. In the corner near the stairs, a folded blanket rested on top of a small trunk. New wool, dark blue. He'd traded 2 good saddle blankets for it in town 3 days ago. He picked it up, shook it out once, then folded it again, tighter this time. Set it back exactly where it had been. Untouched. The wind pressed against the walls again, a low, steady sound. Somewhere out near the road, a horse snorted and stamped. Zeke went back to the table, sat down, and read the letter one more time. Later, much later, when the fire had burned down to coals and the room had settled into that deep, quiet stillness that comes after midnight, he heard boots outside. A knock followed, not loud. Zeke stood, crossed the room, and opened the door. The stage driver stood there, hat in his hands, snow caught in his beard. "Didn't want to say it out there," he said. Zeke waited. The man shifted his weight. "There was another coach. Came up from Cheyenne 2 days before us." Zeke's hand tightened on the edge of the door. "Got caught in that storm I mentioned," the driver went on. "Didn't make it through the pass." "Which pass?" "Dead man." The word hung there between them. Zeke didn't speak. "They're saying it might still be out there," the man added. "Or what's left of it." Zeke's eyes moved, just once, toward the dark line of mountains beyond the yard. "How many on board?" he asked. The driver shook his head. "Don't know. Not for sure." Zeke nodded. That was all. The man lingered a second, like he might say something else, then thought better of it. He pulled his hat back on and turned into the wind. Zeke closed the door. He stood there a long moment, hand still resting on the wood. Then he walked back to the table, folded the letter with care, and slipped it inside his shirt, against his chest. The chair across from him stayed empty. The fire burned low, and somewhere out beyond the ridge the storm kept moving. The fire burned low, and somewhere out beyond the ridge the storm kept moving. Morning came slow and pale, like it didn't want to face what the night had left behind. Zeke was already up when the first light touched the window. The coffee pot sat on the stove, untouched. He stood at the table, one hand braced against the wood, the other holding the same letter from the night before. He didn't read it all this time, just a few lines. "I am not looking to be taken in. I am looking to stand beside someone." He folded it once, careful, slid it back inside his shirt. Outside, the wind had settled, but the cold held on. It always did after a storm, made the world feel quieter than it should. Zeke saddled up without rushing, checked the cinch twice, ran a hand down his horse's neck, feeling the steady warmth under winter coat. He rode into town before the sun had fully cleared the ridge. Broken Ridge looked the same as it always did, smoke rising from chimneys, doors opening slow, folks stepping out with collars turned up against the cold. Martha Pike was already at the doorway of her diner, sweeping yesterday's dust into the street. She paused when she saw him. "You're out early," she said. Zeke nodded once. She leaned on the broom handle, watching him like she was weighing something. "She didn't come, did she?" Zeke didn't answer right away. He stepped down from the saddle, tied his horse, then looked at her. "No." Martha's mouth tightened. Not cruel, just certain. "Happens," she said. People say things in letters they don't mean once it comes time to act. Zeke's gaze didn't shift. She meant it. Martha shrugged, like she'd heard that before. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. Either way, you still got a ranch to run. Zeke didn't argue. He just turned and walked past her, boots thudding soft against the wooden floor inside. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease. A couple of men sat at the counter talking low. They glanced up when he came in, then looked away just as quick. Zeke went straight to the back table, the one near the window. He pulled out the chair, sat down, and finally reached for the coffee Martha set in front of him. It had gone bitter from sitting too long on the stove. He drank it anyway. A folded paper sat beside his hand. Another letter. Older. The edges worn soft from use. He opened it slow. Mr. Harper? I do not expect comfort. I expect work. I expect difficulty. I expect to earn my place. Zeke's thumb traced the edge of the ink, as if the pressure might tell him something the words hadn't. A chair scraped across the floor behind him. Deputy Harlan Shaw took the seat across the room. Not too close, not too far. Close enough to be heard. Heard you were waiting on someone, Harlan said. Zeke didn't look up. Was. Harlan nodded, stretching his legs out. Storm south of Cheyenne hit harder than expected. Lost a few routes this week. Zeke lifted his eyes then. Just a little. You hear anything about that coach? Harlan rubbed his jaw. Nothing solid, just talk. Something went off the road near Dead Man Pass. He paused. You thinking she was on it? Zeke didn't answer. The silence said enough. Harlan leaned back. Zeke, if she missed her ride, she'll show up on the next one. If she didn't, he let the rest hang. Zeke folded the letter, set it down. She left, he said. Harlan frowned. What? She left New Orleans, got on a train, made it as far as Cheyenne. Zeke's voice stayed level. That's not someone changing their mind. Harlan studied him for a second, then nodded once. Fair point. The door opened behind them, letting in a sharp draft of cold air. A man stepped in, coat dusted with snow, boots worn from travel. He stamped his feet, then spotted Martha and raised a hand. Got something for you, he said, pulling a folded scrap from his pocket. Zeke watched without meaning to. The man spoke low at the counter, but the room carried sound in a way old wood always did. Stage from Cheyenne, he said. Went down near Dead Man Pass. Wheel snapped clean. Luggage scattered everywhere. Martha's voice dropped. Anyone make it out? The man shook his head. Didn't find bodies. Didn't find much of anything. Zeke was on his feet before he realized it. The chair tipped back, hit the floor behind him. The room went quiet. He crossed to the counter in 2 steps. When? The man looked up, surprised at first, then cautious. 2, maybe 3 days ago. Where exactly? Pass cut, just past the lower bend. You know it? Zeke did. Everyone did. He reached into his coat, pulled out Lottie's letter, unfolded it just enough to show the name. Lottie Brooks, he said. You see that name anywhere? The man studied the paper, then shook his head slow. No names on the luggage I saw. Just women's things. Fabric. Sewing kit. Zeke's fingers tightened around the letter. He nodded once. Didn't say thank you. Didn't say anything at all. He turned, walked out of the diner, and into the cold without finishing his coffee. Outside, the sky had cleared. Sharp blue stretched over the ridge, but the air still carried the weight of what had passed through it. Zeke untied his horse, checked the saddle, then paused. Just for a second. His hand rested on the leather, his head tilted, like he was listening for something, maybe a reason to stay. None came. He swung up into the saddle in one smooth motion, didn't look back at the diner, or the town, or the road he'd been waiting on the day before. He turned the horse south, toward Dead Man Pass, toward whatever the storm had left behind. The wind had stopped, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any storm. The wind had stopped, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any storm. Zeke rode into it without slowing down. The trail south out of Broken Ridge narrowed quick, bending between low hills where the snow had drifted deep. Hoofbeats came dull against the ground, swallowed by the cold. Even the leather on the saddle seemed quieter out here. He didn't look back. By mid-morning, the sky had gone hard and clear, the kind of blue that meant the storm had moved on, but left its work behind. Snow lay uneven across the land, piled in places where the wind had driven it, scraped bare in others where the ground showed through in frozen patches. Dead Man Pass rose ahead like a long scar through the hills. Zeke leaned forward in the saddle just a touch, easing the pace without breaking it. His horse picked careful steps now, testing the ground before putting weight down. Halfway up the lower bend, he saw it. Not the stage, something smaller. A strip of fabric caught on a broken branch, fluttering weak in the still air. Zeke pulled up. He dismounted slow, boots sinking into the crusted snow, walked the last few steps and reached out. Blue cloth. Fine weave. Not something a man would carry. He didn't rush. He worked it free from the branch, turned it in his hands. Snow had stiffened it, but the stitching held. Careful work. Even. His eyes moved, scanning the ground. Tracks, faint, broken, half filled by drifting snow. But there. He crouched, one hand resting on his knee, studied them. Small steps, close together, walking, not riding. Zeke stood. He didn't speak, didn't need to. He tied the cloth to his saddle horn, mounted again, and followed the line forward. The pass tightened as it climbed, rock on one side, a drop on the other. The road cut narrow between them, just wide enough for a coach and no more. He found the wreck just past the turn. The stage lay on its side, one wheel split clean. The frame twisted, half buried in drifted snow. One of the horses still lay where it had fallen, frozen into the ground, harness pulled tight. Zeke slid down from the saddle and approached on foot. He didn't look at the horse long. He moved to the coach instead. The door hung open. Inside, nothing but torn cushions and scattered boards. No bodies. No sign of anyone staying. He stepped back, turned slow, and took in the ground around it. Tracks everywhere at first. Men's boots. Sheriff's search, maybe. But those had gone stale, edges softened. Beyond that, something else. He walked out from the wreck, counting his steps without meaning to. 10, 20, 30. There. A trunk split open against a rock. The lid torn loose. Fabric spilled out, frozen where it had fallen. Zeke knelt. His hand hovered before he touched anything. Then he reached in, careful, lifting a folded piece of cloth free. A dress. Dark, plain, strong stitching. He held it a second longer than needed, then set it aside. Next came a small tin box. He opened it with his thumb. Needles, thread, buttons wrapped in paper. He closed it again. Slow. Set it back where he found it. His gaze moved past the trunk. More tracks. Not heading back down the pass. Forward. Zeke stood, his chest rising once, deep, then settling again. She kept walking, he said, low enough the words barely left his mouth. He turned, led his horse past the wreck, and followed. The trail grew harder to read the farther he went. Wind had cut through in places, lifting snow clean off the ground. In others, drifts swallowed everything. By late afternoon, the light had started to fade. Zeke found a lean-to tucked against a rock face just off the road. Old, half collapsed. The kind of place a cattle hand might use in summer, not in weather like this. He ducked inside. Cold, empty, but not untouched. The ground had been disturbed. Straw pushed aside. A dark mark near the wall where something had burned. He crouched again, fingers brushing the spot. Ash. Not fresh, but not old enough to be from last season. Zeke sat back on his heels. She'd been here. He stood and stepped back out into the fading light, scanning the ground again. The tracks picked up on the far side. Fainter now. Uneven. He followed them another quarter-mile before they broke apart completely in a stretch of hard, wind-cut ground. He stopped. The land opened up ahead. No clear path, just white and shadow and the slow rise of hills beyond. Zeke didn't move for a long moment. His horse shifted behind him, breath loud in the quiet. Zeke reached up, took the strip of blue cloth from the saddle horn, and turned it once in his hands. Then he looked out across the open stretch again. She didn't turn back, he said. It wasn't a guess. It was the only thing that fit. He tied the cloth back in place, tightened the cinch, and stepped into the stirrup. Dark was coming fast, and the trail, what little of it remained, was leading him straight into it. What little of it remained was leading him straight into it. Zeke rode until the light gave out. Not fast, not reckless, just steady. The kind of pace that didn't break a horse and didn't leave a man second-guessing his direction. The ground shifted under him, snow thinning into patches of frozen dirt, then rising again in drifts that swallowed the lower brush whole. He watched the land the way he always did, not for what was easy to see, for what didn't belong. A bend in the wind line, a stone turned wrong, a shadow that didn't match the slope. He found it just past a low ridge, a rock set crooked against the ground, half buried in snow. Not natural. Too clean on one side. Zeke pulled up. He dismounted without thinking, boots hitting firm ground beneath the thin layer of ice. The cold had settled deeper here. No wind, just a stillness that pressed in from every side. He stepped closer. There was something pinned beneath the rock. A scrap of paper. He knelt, brushing away the snow with the back of his glove. The paper stuck a little where the ice had caught it. He eased it free, careful not to tear it. The ink had bled some, but the hand was steady, even now. If I chose the wrong road, I still chose to walk. Zeke didn't move. His thumb rested over the edge of the page, holding it down against the slight tremor of his hand. He folded it once, slid it into his coat, close to where the others sat. Then he stood and looked out. The main trail ran wide and open ahead, easier ground, the direction most would take without thinking. But off to the right, rough country, stone outcrops, low hills, no clear path. The kind of place a wagon wouldn't go, and a tired traveler wouldn't choose unless there was a reason. Zeke turned his horse without a word. The ground climbed sharp. Snow thinned where the wind had cut through, leaving patches of bare rock slick with ice. His horse picked careful steps, ears forward, breath steady. Zeke leaned low, giving it room to move. Time stretched. The sky went from blue to gray to something darker that sat heavy over the hills. He didn't stop. Not until he saw it. A shape tucked between two ridges. Not a tree. Not a rock, wood. A cabin. Old. Leaning. The roof half sagged under the weight of snow. One side blackened like it had seen fire once and never been repaired. Zeke pulled in slow. He listened first. Nothing. No movement. No sound of animals. Not even wind through the boards. He swung down from the saddle and walked the last few steps. The door hung open a crack. He pushed it wider with the back of his hand. Inside, the air was colder than outside. Ash lay scattered across the floor near a stone hearth. A few broken boards had been dragged close, burned down to black stubs. He stepped in. Slow. His eyes moved across the room. A blanket in the far corner. Not placed. Thrown. Something underneath it. Zeke stopped. For a moment he didn't move at all. Then he crossed the room. He didn't call her name. Didn't speak. He knelt down, one knee pressing into the cold floor, and reached out. The blanket shifted under his hand. He pulled it back just enough. A shoulder. Still. Too still. Zeke's hand hovered a second longer than it should have. Then he set his fingers at her neck. Waited. Nothing. Then... there. Faint. Slow, but there. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Didn't say a word. He moved fast then, but not rough. Gathering what wood he could find, breaking it down with controlled strikes against the hearthstone. He worked the flint with steady hands, sparks catching at the edge of dry fiber buried beneath the ash. It took a moment. Then a small flame. Then more. He fed it careful, built it up. Warmth came slow. He pulled her closer to the fire, not lifting her fully, just enough, dragging the blanket with her, keeping her wrapped tight. Her hand slipped free for a second, falling against his wrist. Light, but it caught. Fingers closing just enough to hold. Zeke stilled. He didn't pull away. He let her hand stay there. After a long while, her breath shifted. Not much, but enough. Her eyes opened halfway, unfocused at first, then settling. Not on the fire. On him. She didn't flinch. Didn't pull back. Her voice came low, dry from cold. You took the wrong road. Zeke didn't answer. She blinked slow, the corner of her mouth moving just enough to shape the rest. Or I took the right one. Her grip on his wrist tightened once, then slipped. Her hand fell back to the blanket. Her eyes closed again. Zeke sat there a moment longer, listening, watching the rise and fall of her breath, making sure it stayed. Then he leaned back, fed another piece of wood into the fire, and settled in beside it. Not close, not far, just enough. So the warmth reached her first. Just enough. So the warmth reached her first. Morning came without color. The sky hung low and gray, the kind that didn't promise anything but more cold. Zeke stepped outside the cabin and broke the ice from the water skin with the butt of his knife. The horse stamped once, breath rising in short clouds. Inside, the fire had burned down to a steady glow. She was awake when he came back in. Not sitting, not moving much, but watching. Her eyes followed the steam from the cup he set near the fire before they settled on him again. Clear now, no confusion left in them. Zeke crouched by the hearth and poured a little water into a tin cup, letting it warm before handing it over. She took it slow. Both hands. Didn't spill a drop. You found me, she said, voice still rough. Zeke shook his head once. You stayed. She let that sit between them. Then she nodded, just barely, and drank. The trip back took 2 days. He didn't rush it. Wrapped her in blankets, tied careful across the saddle in front of him. One hand always near, steadying when the horse shifted on uneven ground. They stopped often. Small fires, short rests, no wasted words. Once she tried to climb down on her own. Her leg gave before her weight settled. Zeke didn't grab her right away. He stood close, watched, gave her the space to try again. When she did, slower this time, he moved in only at the last moment, hand at her elbow, just enough to keep her upright. She didn't thank him. Didn't need to. By the time Broken Ridge came into view, the snow had started to melt at the edges of the road. Mud showed through. Wagon tracks cut deep where the thaw had softened the ground. Martha Pike was the first to see them. She stepped out from the diner, wiping her hands on her apron, then stopped dead in the doorway. "Lord above," she muttered. Zeke rode straight through town. Didn't slow. Didn't answer the looks. At the clinic, Dr. Calloway met them at the door, sleeves already rolled. "Inside," he said, not wasting time. Zeke carried her in, set her down careful on the narrow bed by the window. The doctor worked quiet, cutting away fabric, cleaning what needed cleaning. His face didn't change much, but his hands slowed once, then steadied again. Zeke stood by the wall, didn't step closer, didn't look away. After a while, Calloway straightened. He wiped his hands on a cloth and glanced toward Zeke before speaking. "She'll live," he said. Then, after a beat, "but not the way she did before." Silence filled the room. Not heavy, not sharp, just there. Lottie turned her head slightly on the pillow. "Tell me what's left," she said. No tremor in it. Calloway met her eyes. Enough to stand, not enough to forget. She held his gaze a moment longer, then nodded. "That'll do." The days that followed moved slow. Zeke didn't stay inside the clinic long. He came and went, brought things without being asked. Clean cloth, coffee, a small sewing kit he'd picked up from a supply wagon passing through. He left them by the door. Never handed them directly. By the end of the week, work had started at his place. Boards stacked by the porch, a new frame laid out beside the old doorway. He cut the threshold lower, widened the entrance, shifted the stove bricks one by one until the top sat at a height that didn't ask much. Folks noticed. They always did. Deputy Shaw leaned on the fence one afternoon, watching. "You sure about this?" he asked. Zeke kept working. Hammer fell, nail set, didn't answer, didn't need to. The morning she came out, the ground was still damp from the night frost. She held a cane, plain wood, no polish, each step measured. The bucket slipped from her hand halfway to the well. Water spread across the dirt, soaking into the ground faster than it should have. She stood there, breathing steady. Zeke was in the doorway, watching. He didn't move, didn't step forward, didn't call out. After a long moment, she bent down again. Slower this time, picked the bucket up, walked back. Step by step. When she reached the porch, she paused, looked up at him. He stepped aside, gave her room. Later, inside, she tested the stove, reached it without leaning, set the kettle down. Zeke leaned against the doorframe. "Lower," he said. She glanced back at him. A small thing, but it held. A few days after, they stood in the small church at the edge of town. No crowd, just the preacher, Martha in the back, the door half open to let in light. Zeke stood where he always did, still. Lottie beside him, cane resting against the bench. The preacher cleared his throat, ready to begin. Zeke looked at her. Not long, just enough. "You still want this?" he asked. She didn't smile, didn't soften it. "I chose it before I met you." That was enough. The rest passed quiet. No long vows, no raised voices, just two names written down in a ledger that had seen many come and go. Outside, the wind had eased. The sky opened a little. Back at the house, she took her place by the window, needle in hand. Thread pulled tight, then eased. Zeke worked in the yard, hammer striking iron, slow, even. The door stayed open between them, no words crossing it. None needed. The chair across the table wasn't empty anymore. None needed. The chair across the table wasn't empty anymore. Out past the fence line, the land stretched the same as it always had, wind over dry grass, distant hills holding their shape against the sky. Nothing out there had changed, but inside that house something had. Not loud, not sudden, just steady. The kind of change that comes from staying when leaving would have been easier. From choosing when nothing ahead looks certain. He never tried to carry her, and she never asked him to. What they built didn't come from rescue, or from promises spoken too soon. It came from small things, a lowered stove, a hand that waits instead of pulling, a step taken, even when it hurts. If you stood there long enough, you'd see it. In the way she set her needle down at dusk, in the way he paused his work, just for a second, to listen for her movement inside. Not to check, just to know she was there. Maybe that's what holds people together out here. Not strength alone, not need, but the quiet decision to keep choosing the same person, even after the storm has passed. So if it were you, would you have turned back or kept riding into the snow? And if stories like this stay with you, there are more waiting just beyond the next ridge.